kids. They're bundles of energy, but they need the right snacks to keep them going. That's why I give my kids Fruity Bars. They're full with
Uh-oh.
In true internet fashion, the web was abuzz with memes during the net neutrality debates of 2017 and 2018. But what is this issue, and how does it affect our everyday lives? Internet neutrality, more commonly known as net neutrality, is a complicated topic with many implications. The term was first coined by Tim Wu of Columbia University in 2003 to describe proposed regulations on entities called common carriers. Common carriers are known today as Internet Service Providers, or ISPs. Broadly, net neutrality is the idea that all data on the web should be treated equally, regardless of content, user, platform, or device. But it is a heavily loaded term that means different things to those on both sides of the debate. The question we ask today, whether the issue needs to be addressed by President-elect Joe Biden and the new Congress.
In my view, the FCC should take a forward-thinking approach, look at a more technologically neutral, less regulatory way of thinking about it.
In June 2018, Ajit Pai, appointed by President Trump to chair the Federal Communications Commission, led the agency in a historic decision to change the classification of Internet service providers from a telecommunication service to an information service. Under the Communication Act of 1934, organizations designated as a telecommunication service are prohibited from changing the form or content of information transmitted between 2 points, while information services can alter the content in some ways. The decision is known by many as the repeal of net neutrality because of the ability it gives Internet service providers to block, throttle, or prioritize content. Under this new rule, they can prohibit you from viewing certain websites, blocking, slow down your speeds to make it easier on their networks, throttling, or put paid user content ahead of other content, prioritization.
You know, there are a lot of information services where you retrieve information from a website like Netflix or ESPN.com. When you're getting information and it's not just being transmitted, but you're sort of interacting with it. So there's been this debate for many years. What is internet access? Is it a telecom service or is it an information service?
Even though they both represent the same kinds of member companies, US Telecom is welcoming of the new classification, while Encompass is opposed to it.
And so what Chairman Pai did is he recalibrated the rules, used some different authority, and made sure that it was more of a light touch regulatory environment. All of the broadband providers that I work with and I know still have come out and said that they're not going to block or throttle or engage in paid prioritization of user content. And to my knowledge, we really haven't seen any big violations of any of that in the past 3 years.
I'd say the evidence that we've seen is contrary to that. So consumers often don't even know the types of behaviors that are affecting their content delivery. For instance, one of the biggest content delivery disputes that happened during the net neutrality discussion during the Obama administration, just before the commission put the rules into place, most consumers didn't even realize it was their ISP that was the problem. So they just saw they were having trouble connecting to the content provider. They didn't know why they couldn't access that content provider. And even if consumers can figure out that there's an issue, consumers are like, we have nowhere else to go.
So what has actually happened since the repeal of net neutrality?
We've seen an instance of throttling. You know, that in fact, that even happened while the court case was still pending about the repeal on net neutrality. And so that was just a couple of years ago, and it was in the middle of a major public safety issue. And the traffic that was being throttled was fire department's traffic. So that was a significant issue. In fact, as things have come up, there was an issue that came up last week, for instance. A very large company announced it was going to apply data caps across the board in all situations for the home service. And consumers are really upset. And you can see the traffic on Twitter, for instance, just bashing this particular company, and consumers complaining that they don't have choice, that they would switch to a different provider if they could. but they don't have a choice at home.
I do think that President-elect Biden should definitely address net neutrality in some form. With a Democratic majority, the FCC could pass a new rule to reverse Ajit Pai's 2018 order and reinstate the 2015 order with Obama-era net neutrality rules. But at this point, the FCC has reversed net neutrality positions so many times as the executive branch transfers from Democrats to Republicans.
Even though net neutrality has 53% of Democrats and 40% of Republicans in favor, different definitions exist for both sides of the aisle and therefore make it really hard to pass legislation in Congress. Even though necessary net neutrality regulation will be likely reinstalled with President-elect Biden's appointees to the FCC, legislation is required to ensure a lasting solution. With the pandemic in full swing and the vaccine still months away from being fully distributed, the internet has become a lifeline for American life. In a world with restrictions, blocking, paid prioritization, speed throttling, and data caps, life in a pandemic would be impossible, and the internet would be changed forever.